Hello, Ali. How are you?
Good, thanks. So, how is it going?
It's going well. It's good. I'm happy to be here. I was just thinking while the intro was going, I love the intro. It gives me a minute just to kind of pause and take a moment. But I was like, I love the intro. And then I was thinking, I looked down at the calendar and I was like, I can't believe it's September already. It's almost the end of Q3. We're really looking at the weather's starting to change here in Buffalo. So the weather's in the 50s uh, Fahrenheit. So I know it's different for you for the rest of the entire world. Um, but it feels like fall. We just had our first football game. The Buffalo Bills pulled a W out, which was great. That was yesterday, and here we are starting out. A Monday call, which I don't get a chance to do with you that often. So I'm super excited. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely feeling the change in temperature. Well, I mean, we were away in Eastern Europe, in Romania for the summer, and it was scorching hot. Another word that we're going to be seeing later on in the presentation, but it was scorching hot, and I was sweating for probably about 3 months without stop. And it's nice to be in a climate now where, like, I think it's about 15 degrees Celsius, which is still shorts and t-shirt weather for Northern Ireland. Definitely ice cream weather, but it's definitely my kind of climate as well. So I'm happy to not be sweating for once.
Yeah, the Northern Ireland weather is definitely my type of climate. I prefer the that type of climate. I don't love the extremes of heat. And in here's in Buffalo, we do get the extreme cold sometimes. Not so much as they'll get up north um, in northern Canada or even in some of the northern states like Minnesota or those states. But we do get pretty cold here, and we're right by the lake, so we get hit with a ton of snow. They call it lake effect snow. So our snow totals are significantly higher than some areas in the U.S. So I'm not looking forward to that part, but I am looking. I do love this current weather, and I do like where we're at now. And I know we were talking briefly that you do have a great presentation for us today. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, we're going to keep it quite loose, conversational, and loads of interaction. And we're going to be talking about, in fact, I'm going to share my screen now. And Esso and anyone else who's been on the stream while I'm in this setting, I'm using my home mic. And it's weird, at like minute 20, it starts to go robotic. So Esso, you're going to be in charge of telling me to fix my mic
Of
whenever
course.
that happens. But in the meantime, I'm going to share my screen.
Looks like in the meantime, we do have a couple people we could say hello to. I know Sue, Ricardo, usual suspects in the chat. So hello. Sue is saying, "Go Bills." I love it. Love the extra effort that we're going to need it all year. I think after last, it's always a nail biter. But it's good to see you guys. So make sure everyone else is here. Say hi in the chat.
So yeah, like I said, it's going to be nice and relaxing and very informal. In fact, you can see here, I'm not even going to make my screen full, and you can skip to the front and read ahead if you want. Reason is because we're going to be jumping between this presentation slide deck and also Amazon as well, and a little bit of the springboards to give us some good ideas later. So yeah, all we're talking about today is market demand, and we're going to isolate this element of research for this session. And we're not going to look at anything else. We're not going to look at attributes into too much detail. We're not going to look at competitors. We're going to be looking at this one area, and I thought it'd be a good idea to just isolate this one area on its own, just because it's one of the ones that I find that people get a little bit stuck on, just because it's not a black and white sort of area. There's a lot of operating in the gray, as we like to say. So yeah, market demand, market size, that's what we're talking about today. So before we jump into this, Esso, what is your kind of experience? If you remember whenever you were learning the research process, whenever you were looking at market demand and that whole concept of analyzing a level of demand in a certain market, did you find that it was quite straightforward, or did you find that you needed to kind of you need a bit more time to kind of digest the concepts around it?
I think market demand was a little more challenging early on, and the reason was is because there were some other things that we were learning at the same time. You just start learning, you really open your eyes up. I remember the first video that we were learning on, it literally was, this is Amazon's platform, this is the search bar. And and to be honest, that's where we started, right? And so then you start to learn things, the idea of clones and the other pieces come into existence and into your understanding. So early days, I think it was easier for me to recognize those pieces than it was for me to understand maybe the demand. However, once I spent more time, and that's really, I think what helped the most was just spending more time opening more Amazon pages, looking at more products, and over and over and over repeating those processes. I was able to start to identify market demand, and more understanding of market demand. But it continues to change. Amazon's platform continues to change. They're doing things with their systems all the time. So it's important that, of course, we have this conversation. So I'm excited to be a part of it for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. And, on my side, whenever I was kind of learning this stuff, it's like, it was definitely a bit of, I almost found it a little bit counterintuitive. Surely we're looking at the biggest markets as the most demand as possible, because it goes without saying why we don't want to get involved in a market that's too small, because there's just a lack of demand. There's not enough buyers for what we're looking to sell. So I understand that concept, but having like a bit of a ceiling didn't really make sense to me. And the more I kind of understood and learned over time, it's really all about minimizing risk. So if we go down to the next, let me just come onto here, and yeah. So first, I'm going to look at the 80-20 rule. And, this is one rule that I really like to kind of look at whenever I'm analyzing something or going into something new. It's like, what's the one element that's going to give me the most leverage? And whenever we're looking at product research, I like to see assessing a market size or market demand is your 80-20 rule. It's going to be the one thing that if you can master that one piece of analysis, you only have to get that part right and you're 80% of the way there. But like I said, it's one of those things that drills over and over again, and researching and putting a lot of hours into it is what's going to allow you to hone those skills. And talking about skills, it is a learnable skill. And, over the years, I've definitely kind of gone through a love-hate relationship with research because of the amount of, I probably overdid it because I knew how important that element to this business was. So I spent too much time on it. I spent too many hours, too many days. I did fall into an area of just not finding anything and just thinking, oh, I'm not good at this. This is something that is, people are born with that skill. It's just not me. I don't have an eye for it. But over time, I realized I was overdoing it and spending way too much time obsessing over it. Scaled it back to the point where it was, okay, if I've got a bad sort of run here, I'm going to pause, come back tomorrow with a fresh pair of eyes. That definitely helped with my relationship with research. I'm definitely in a place now where I love it. But it's definitely a learnable skill. So definitely have some patience whenever you're learning this, and don't beat yourself too much. So as I mentioned as well, it's a primary risk minimizer. Again, it's almost like a prerequisite where we've got a small market, not enough demand. Why would we want to bring a product in? Conversely, on the other side, when you have a market that's way too big, it's inherently going to come with a lot of competition. It's going to increase your risk in terms of the ability to stand out. It's going to increase your capital liabilities whenever you're wanting to rank for keywords on PPC. So there's a number of reasons why we don't want to look for, the more the merrier in this case.
When you were, if you go back to that last one for me real quick, just on when you were talking about the small market, the small market, I think I agree with you. I think it was the easier market to identify early on. And the reason was because, those were kind of like the products that we were really going after, which was really unique, really isolated type of products that didn't have a lot of competition that would stand out. And it's funny because I think what helped us early, or definitely helped me early days with market demand, was the small markets, because those products were actually I want to say easier to find. You would stumble into a product that had very, very little competition. And then what we would do is we would present these products, or we would talk about these products, and I would listen to you talk about all the other nuances that go into selecting a product or to find its viability just by looking at through the Amazon process. And I think early days, with my limited understanding, I just focused in on trying to find something that was very unique and very isolated. And that all we actually had gone forward with a couple products that were in very small markets. And after selling in some of those small markets, it does have its benefits, but it also has its challenges too, which means it's not flying out the door. You end up having it longer. So then you get into the 3PL issues where we were storing it for longer than we would have liked to. So there's many different areas that this can definitely touch. And so it's important to talk about these things. But I definitely agree with you when it comes to it being a learnable skill, because you almost have to repeat it a few times until you identify, like, oh, I've seen this, what's the next step? So I really do like this. And I think that you grow, it's one of the things that you mentioned, which was patience. And it takes time to get there, but you do grow into it. My skill level obviously is not nearly what it used. I think maybe even what it used to be. I don't spend the time researching like I used to, but I do spend a lot of time talking about markets and talking about market size and talking about viability of products. And of course, you and Emily, the way you guys have, taken it on, I think it's funny to listen to you, Ali, speak about your reluctance to think that you are a good researcher, being that you are an absolute subject matter expert when it comes to research now. It's interesting to hear it, but I think it's good for the group and for everybody else watching, because it kind of gives you that break on yourself, kind of take it easy on yourself. You're probably doing better than you think you are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make this as relatable as possible, because that I was in the same boat. Early research was tough. It was difficult. It was learning a new skill. But just kind of keeping at it and developing and honing those skills over time. I like to take that approach into all areas of my business as well. So yeah, I'd say I'm no different than anyone else. All right. So yep, market demand it's a variable that can vary, and we've seen this as well. You can see that with seasonality. Yes, we stay away from seasonal, like ultra seasonal sort of products like Halloween, Christmas, Easter, that sort of stuff. But even within products that are, or markets that are within our criteria, we can see an element of seasonality, and that's where I like to use Keeper to see the BSR history, setting it to a year, and just see where that trend line goes. Other things that can affect an appearance of a market size is competitor stockouts. So we're potentially seeing markets, and we can look at some, for example, that might appear ultra small or very cold markets where there's hardly anything there. And how many times have we been in a market and been like, oh, if there was just one more seller in this market that was at a comfortable BSR, I'd feel a lot more comfortable. My risk would be sort of leveled out. But there could have been that extra competitor, but they might have been out of stock, hence why we never saw it. So I like to keep, these ultra small markets where 1 to 2 new competitors, or competitors that I can see in front of me. I like to keep that on the sideline, visit every couple of months, every quarter. I like to review all of my products that I've sourced and come back and see, has anything changed? Has anything changed on the seasonality element to what we're looking at? But has there anything changed in terms of how many competitors are inside the market? And lastly, a market age. We could see new markets evolving and maturing, similar to number of competitors. There might only be 2 offerings that have only been live for 60 days in a niche that's relatively new, or a sub niche that's relatively new. So certainly coming back to your research time and time again, what you might have ruled out in the past could potentially be something that you look into in the future.
I think too, when it comes to some of these pieces, to touch on the seasonality, this is a conversation I often have, because a lot of products that we do discuss, they have a level of seasonality to them. And I know Emily and I, for our own portfolio, we're not really afraid of seasonal products. And then the idea of like very seasonal that you were describing, 1 day type of seasonal, 1 week, yes, of course, we avoid those things like the plague. However, when it comes to a level of seasonality, I think there's a couple ways to handle it. One is you're trying to recoup your money in a very short period of time, which is very, very positive, and you can kind of bank on it and you can rely on it and you can build off of that with data. The other side of it is you have a little bit of time built in. I think that's one portion of it, and the other thing, to take it one step further, is the being able to go global. Being able to go global really helps mitigate that risk that you were talking about, and can continue to build into that, and keeping that risk low. I think the I'm always looking at Keepa when we're reviewing products with people, and seeing where, especially if we have a competitor, if they've gone out of stock, because that is something that we do take into consideration when we're looking at it. And then I would say, the market age. The market age, I think what's really nice about market age when we think about products is, in the past, historically, you would be really cautious of this. But given the way that we can do things with All One, and the way we could possibly even get it into an insight product, is it possible that we could get a manufacturer to offer us a low, a very, very low MVQ, get it the ability to go insight on a product that maybe doesn't have that age, and be able to be one of the first people in that market, because we feel that the product could have viability. We eliminate that risk by taking that insight, and I just think that this allows us to go into that direction a little bit, because it is something that we look at when it comes to market demand. Is, of course, we'd want to be looking at how long this has been happening. So I think we're sitting in a pretty good position at private label people.
Yeah, definitely. And exactly what you just said, and then multiply that by our market reach, I think just really amplifies everything, which is cool. And that's one thing that reminded me about when you were talking about seasonality as well. The fact that we can send in small amounts to different markets, really cancels out some of that seasonality, which was an element of risk previously. Let's take, for example, one of the products that we sell. It's a surfboard wall mount. It holds multiple surfboards, and it's always been a relatively seasonal product for us, certainly in North America and Europe as well. But this is the first year that we were able to see this product in Australia, and obviously it's a different climate over there, and they have a season system which is kind of back to front to what we're used to as well. So it's really cool to see products which we would tend to see a bit of a dip in sales during the winter months, or the northern hemisphere's winter months. We're able to see that product sell well, and products like that in the likes of Australia.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. It's really exciting.
So just a quick recap before we go deep into market demand. We've got ABC, which is our very simple, easy to follow research strategy. And we're looking at attributes, which is something that we would have looked at before whenever we're looking at research. So these are attributes that we would easily identify early on in our research, which will allow us to immediately rule a product out before we even dive into the market and get into market size. So attributes such as powered electrical, chemical products, liquids, aerosols, gas, products that come into contact with skin, prohibited products, multi-boxed, products that aren't able to be accepted by FBA, fragile products, lots of moving parts, weight capacities, operation and complexity. So these are, attributes that we look at in products which allow us to rule a product out very quickly. Then we look at the BSR, which is exactly in the realm where we are today, which is our bestseller rank, or looking at the size of a market. And then we look at our competition, C being competition. Are there a number of different offerings in the market? Does the consumer have a lot of choice between what is presented with them? Are there a lot of the same sort of offerings again and again and again, therefore making it very difficult to really stand out? So let's forget about attributes for now, and we can certainly come back onto another stream and zoom into each of those. But for now, we're going to be looking at BSR, or market demand. So we have 6 levels of demand, and I thought this approach might be a little bit straightforward. I have separated them into 3 different areas because we treat each area differently. So level 0, we've got freezing, 1 being cold, 2 mild. So 2, 3, and 4 are what we would tend to call like an average-ish market size. If it's a mild product, it's kind of small. Warm is like straight down the middle, warm market. 4 being hot. Then we're getting into the larger markets, which are scorching and blazing. So make a mental note of that. We can revisit this slide later on just because it's a little bit of a updated concept to what we've known in the past. And we can look at some examples as well and how to treat each of these elements. But so before we move on, is there anything in the chat? Is there any questions, or do you have any questions so far?
Nothing in the chat. I was thinking about the team in there, about some of the market demand, and if this is a question that they have when they're getting into some of the research. I know Ricardo's on with us today, and I know that he's sent tons of products in for approvals, and he continues to do that, and that's always a great thing. These are some of the questions that I know you go over, and questions and answers that you go over when you do an approval for someone. So I would say, continue to use that as a source of, use it to lean into it for your product research, of course, and to take some of that valuable information that you get back from Ollie in order to move forward with products. But I think that this is definitely, part of the process that we go through. And I love the new updated demand levels. I see where the scorching comes in that you were talking about, and it's funny because there are very many levels when you talk about a product like this and the size of them. And sometimes we can find products and we forget to look at this part of it, right? We get so locked in on the specifics of the product, or we like the product, and we really have to take a step back and look at it's something that I think happens over time for sure, is where you just look at the numbers. For now, before we really fell in love with products, but now if the numbers, I fall in love with the numbers. If the numbers work and they're strong, I don't even question it. I just go forward with it. We just make that decision to go forward because of the data. And that's so important. And I think that, it's breaking it down on a micro level like this that allows us to get to that other level when we're ready to put down an investment on it.
Absolutely. So let's move on to how do we treat each type. So let's start off with freezing. I went with 0 being freezing because 0 Celsius is the freezing point. Whenever we see products that are in this category of freezing, we want to avoid them. We want to potentially monitor them, similar to what we were talking about earlier. So if we come across a market where it's definitely freezing, if we see 2 to 3 more offerings in this area for the same kind of product type, we'd feel a lot more comfortable. If we can push it into that cold area, then we'd feel a lot more comfortable. We'd be able to offset our risk by knowing that there's at least some level of demand. But in this case of freezing, potentially monitor, and here's an example of something that I would determine to be as freezing. So let's just grab that ASIN and put it into our search. Okay, so this is the product here, which I would class as freezing, and this is an auto panel tree. So interestingly, I do have this on the sideline. I do want to come back and revisit, but whenever we're looking at this, we've got the products at the top, which all kind of resemble what we're looking at here. Just going to let the BSRs load. And if we scroll down, we've got 211,000, we've got 800,000, 500,000, rank not found. We've got another one down here, which looks to be a new seller with only 1 review. 300,000 in automotive. So far, there's not enough information. There's not enough telling me that there is an organic level of demand for this type of product. Then we scroll down, we're still way outside of range. This is the only thing on this page that is selling very well, and it's not the same product, so therefore we can discard it. Got another one here at 500,000. So there's just simply not enough demand for this to whet our appetite, so we would move on. And
Holly, when it comes to this, just these numbers here, if you scroll back up just a little bit, so I'm seeing in this first row, you're seeing 200,000, 800,000, 500,000. And what you're saying from these BSRs, I know all the partners that are on today, they're all super researchers. They know all this stuff, but maybe somebody that isn't the greatest researcher is catching this on a replay. What we're seeing when we look at these numbers is that the demand, meaning these are ranked so high that people just aren't purchasing these on a regular basis. They may be purchased, but they're so infrequent that these are products that we'd want to stay away from. Is that what we're saying specifically?
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that it's easy to say that there's just no demand, it's cold, nobody's buying. But if we speak to TCP or any of these other brands, they are making some sales. It's just not in the area, not in the realm where we are comfortable to say that there's enough sales here to reduce as much risk as possible. It's just outside it. So not to say that nobody's buying these products, because I guarantee people are buying these products. It's just outside of the realm of where we want to operate.
And so you said you're going to put this. Now I know we've done this. I've seen Emily's lists. She's going to put this aside. You're going to put this aside, and you're going to review this in 3 months or 6 months. You're going to come back, and are you going to specifically be looking at the BSRs again? Are you looking for more sellers, or are you just looking at BSRs at that point?
Yeah, I'd say a mixture of both, because I'd want to see, is there anything that's more comfortably in range? Are there any newer sellers like this one, for example, who's only got one review? I'd give them a little bit more of a chance to see how they kind of, or what kind of trend that they're on as well. So yeah, just coming back into the market, seeing if there's anything new in terms of a different perspective of a market size. Has there been a seller in this market that was just killing it and now out of stock, therefore really hindering what we're looking at the moment? Because everything else kind of adds up in terms of number of search results. Like I said, we're not really going to go into the other attributes, but everything kind of lines up. And the fact is that whenever you have a small market or a coldish market, we're able to leverage the likes of very low order quantities in order to test. So on one side, we've got a higher level of risk because of the lack of demand. But on the other side, we're able to mitigate our risk by reducing how many pieces we order for the first order.
I also think, why it's so important is, if anybody's been into a market where they've had to drive their sales through PPC, and what some people do, it just is a price tactic. Maybe we only have one tactic. We were talking about this recently on a stream too, about just the one tactic sellers, that competition wise, that's not a place that you want to get into. And I think that's why we avoid. It's another reason we're avoiding a product like this at this time, because of that demand. We don't want to have to buy our sales through PPC. It doesn't help us at all.
Yep, absolutely. There are things kind of going for this as well, hence why it is on the sideline. The fact that there are very few offerings that are doing FBA, and you just mentioned as well PPC. There's nobody ranking for what I believe is this generic search term as well. So there are certain things going for this, hence why it is on the sideline, but it's just too small of a market for us to operate at the moment.
Very good example.
All right, let's move on to the next one. And we're looking at cold now. So cold markets, we're going up the thermometer now, and we can see a market that has a little bit of demand. The market size is starting to show a little bit of demand, and we're in the realm of cold. We're in a cold market. So you might notice that we don't run away from this right away. It's not in our ideal areas. It's in an element of high risk area because of its size. So we are looking to offset that risk by having a product that has a higher sales price. So that's key. That's definitely rule number one, is that you want, for a cold market, you want to find products that are over $50, and we're also looking for a high cash profit as well for products like this. So again, we're looking on one side an increase in risk, so we need to find other ways to mitigate that risk that we're looking at. So sales price and profitability, but also low MOQ. And I remember when I built this slide deck, this was kind of around the time when we were introducing ultra low MVQs, so very low order quantities, for us to allow us to test the market without having to invest for a full MOQ. So something like this sort of area we would want to see as low MOQ as possible. And we can take a look at one of these examples. And as you can see, the example is out of stock. So let's go into Google and we can see that this one here is, let me just close that. So it's a plastic newspaper delivery tube. So I'm going to open this one up. And it's gone all weird. I'm just going to make this a bit smaller so everyone can see. So that's another trick as well. If anyone didn't know, if you've done a bunch of research and you've got an ASIN, you put it into the search bar and nothing comes up, 9 times out of 10, it means that it's out of stock, like this one. So we scroll down, we can see exactly, yep, it went out of stock early August, and yeah, it was selling for $36.99. So let's just grab the search term. I think this is like a newspaper delivery tube. So I'm going to open this one up into our original Amazon. And let's scroll down and we can see that there are 2 offerings at the top. Let's wait for the BSRs to load. And we can see 163, so not as high as the previous market. And then if we hover over that, we can see at the bottom right, Keeper showing us that there are some fluctuations there, hovering around that 200,000 mark. And we've got on the right here as well, pretty much the same. It looks like they've got issues with staying in stock also. So again, this is where Keeper really comes in handy when you have products that are out of stock, but also not as much visibility on the market as possible. So I like to put this to a year, and this is kind of fluctuating in and around 100,000. So I would call this a cold market. It's not freezing. It's not where that previous auto panel product was. We're seeing more demand for this type of product. So therefore, I would call this a cold market. Is that making sense to you, Esso? And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to message in the chat box as well.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if it's making sense to the group. And for me, this is, this one becomes a little tempting, right? Because what I love to see is I love when our competitors go out of stock, because our infrastructure allows us to do this better than other people, and I feel it gives us a competitive edge. So that one I like to see. Then I see a product like this, and I can start to talk myself into these BSRs, going, maybe we could do something here. I feel, could we stand out? Of course. Can we push? Can we have a better listing? Can we put on better clothes for these products and all of those things? However, the data is the data, right? And so if we're saying it's cold at this point, it's a little too much. We have to make business decisions as opposed to how we feel on something. And this is one of those ones that I'm grateful for systems like this, because I may push it a little bit and end up with some of these units. Now, what I do love, and I'm going to keep saying it, if we can make this into an insight product and you can get an ultra, like you were saying, you can get a low MVQ on this and go forward, instead of buying 500 or 600 of these in a cold market, you're buying, 50 or 60 of them, and you're able to put them in the number one market and test them, a real test. That speaks volumes about what you could do. What answering that second question was, would I reorder this product? So this is really great.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And when you just mentioned as well, putting better clothes on this listing, and you can already see their title doesn't seem to be greatly optimized. It's not bad, but I think it can certainly be improved on. They do have one image, which is zoomable, but one image is just one image as well. So the fact that this is probably the market leader is actually a good thing, because it allows us to offset that risk by bringing a new breath of fresh air into this market. But overall, this is one that we could potentially come back to. This is definitely going to be on the sidelines for what we're looking at, but it does not meet our criteria of over 50. High cash profit is going to be unlikely, because I think it was at around $36. We can certainly look at MOQs, but this is one that we would rule out for now. But in total or in entirety, that's how we assess a cold market. So let's move on to a little bit of a warmer climate. We've got the mild, the warm, and the hot. And I've put this all into one area for one reason. It's because we treat these three temperatures the same, because they're in and around the zones that we want to work in. Because mild, warm, and hot, we treat them exactly the same. These are the areas where you are minimizing as much risk as possible. And they're great for your first few products because of that, because you are mitigating as much risk as possible. We are comfortable with those standard MOQ sizes because of that reduced risk. We can accept for a level of competition as well. Compared to, say, the colder markets that we've seen, had we have seen not just a cold market, but also a lack of visibility in the market, confusion around the search term, number of offerings that make it hard to really stand out. Those kind of criteria, we've got a little bit more wriggle room inside the mild, warm, and hot. So let's take a look at some examples of some mild, or we could even call these the lukewarm sort of areas. I'm going to close down one of these and open up our Amazon. All right, so we have I think this is like a wall hay rack. So let's go with our search term of wall hay rack. And let's scroll down and wait for the BSRs to load. So we're going to be looking at pretty much anything in and around that same price point, in and around the same sort of offer type as well. So what we're looking at is the top three up here, potentially this one up here, and also this one. They're all kind of in and around that same price point. We've got 33,000, 31,000, 47,000, 44,000, 54,000. So you can see that the actual BSRs are significantly lower than the previous two products that we looked at. And also we have a kind of wider spread of offerings that fall within that lower BSR range. So let's scroll down and see what else we have. We've got a 55,000, 47,000, 85,000. Is there anything else? We've got 97,000. We're starting to kind of increase on our market size. 51,000, 43,000, 57,000. While we're not seeing ultra low BSRs, there are a large number of offerings that are in that kind of realm of, I'd probably call this quite like a hot market. So is this kind of making sense to everybody? Eso, could you check in the chat and see if anyone has any questions? Is it making sense to you, Eso? Do you want me to clarify anything? You can be the voice of the audience.
You know what? Everybody seems to be doing. There's no questions particularly in the chat right now. But what's funny is I have seen this market before. I had seen it quite some time ago, and so it's funny when you see a market grow. This market actually has grown some since the last time I've seen it, and I don't get too discouraged by competition. Competition's good. We want competition. What I see in the market like this when I'm looking at it is, you see some in and some out, but I also see the different types are here. So what are where are we looking? We start to get into the specifics of those. But I do think overall that this market, I see why it moves into the, between the warm and the hot area, because it is different than the other ones that we are looking at. When you're in those 900, 500,000, 900,000, you do see a lack of offerings. And all of a sudden you're into a market here where you're like, this is an interesting market. I think that there's something inside here that we could potentially test and have success with. I do see how that changes for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever we're getting into these kind of areas where it's like, it's heading towards being hot, it's still got a bit more room for it to be too hot. We start to see certain things. I've just noticed this now. I've never seen this before. This is a twin pack. It's a twin pack at a pretty hefty price point as well, 93,000. I would be inclined to move into this listing, look at the BSR history, see if it's a variation listing. There could potentially be two SKUs here, without going too outside of what we're looking at here. I always like to have a multi-SKU'd product. So let's look at another example of another product that fits within this realm of mild, warm, and hot.
Patricia is joining the conversation. Only one seller with the 2-pack, so she's right in there with you with the 2-pack. So good eye, Patricia.
So this one, I do remember this one, and it was like a Korean barbecue grill. So I just want to check. Just want to put in barbecue as well. Barbecue, just to see if that changes. No, pretty much the same in terms of number of search results. And the style that we're looking at is this sort of charcoal home use Korean barbecue grill. So this is the one that I think we looked at just now, 49,000. And if we scroll down, we have another one here at 52,000. And I'm skipping over these. It's a slightly different price point. Yes, it has a relative or similar sort of functionality as the main product. They're slightly different in style, and you can see that these are Japanese. So we have another one potentially along the same lines at 48,000. So you can see that this is a smaller market for the style of product that we're looking at, smaller than the previous wall hay rack, because we have a handful of offerings that are pretty low in BSR, 50,000 in and around that side. So if we're looking at the mild, warm, or hot, I would say that this is probably mild to warm compared to the hot, which was the wall hanger for hay. Like there was a significant amount more offerings that were comfortably in range. So while they're almost at the polar opposites within these this area of mild, warm, and hot, I would still treat them the same in terms of level of risk.
Sue's mentioning in the chat that some of the main images are a bit misleading, so she's digging in over there on her own side, I think. But I do agree that sometimes the main images, we see people cheating all the time. Putting stuff in there that you're not supposed to. It's just not something that we do. We want to stay. Amazon is the leader here. We want to make sure they stay. They're happy with us, and we don't want to give them any reason to ping us for something. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then the last example for this area, and also just while we're going through with this as well, guys, if you have any ASINs to hand at the end of this, we can do some drills, we can do some live assessments on a market size. So gather whatever ASINs you have to hand. If you want another monitor, open up your Amazon and just find some products for us, and we as a group we can have a look and determine a product's market size. So in the meantime, just while you're all doing that, I'm going to grab the search term for this, which will be a trampoline slide. It's going ultra generic. I'm not adding anything crazy here. I'm just looking for what this product is, and we can see it seems that I have the right search term. So we've got 5 across the top here. 20,000, 23,000, 46, 55, 59. We're looking at a market size that's almost identical to the wall hay rack so far. And let's scroll down past the sponsored. We've got an 89,000, 48,000, 63, 57, and one that's kind of quite high. Got a few more down here. We're starting to see some increases in BSRs. We've got 55,000, 43,000. So this is significantly bigger than the Korean barbecue grill. However, it's not to the realms of scorching. It's not It's not in areas where I would be too concerned in terms of the market size. It's definitely edging towards it, and it would probably fail more so on the competitors, on the number of competition in this market. But we're not looking at that. We're looking at market size only. So this is what I would probably call a hot market also, and it would be treated similarly to all of these. So this is the area that I know we're going to spend most time in because it's the area of comfort. It's the area of as low risk as possible. But let's move on to, the polar opposite of those freezing cold products, and we're starting to get into the scorching sort of areas. So pretty much similar to cold markets. It's not a no deal having a product in the scorching area, but you will want to mitigate that risk on the other side. So you'd want to do a very in-depth competition analysis of what's in the market. Can we have a scorching market where the majority of those are not FBA, therefore not eligible for prime orders? Are there just very few offerings in total, but they're just very low BSRs? In that case, just a bit of a side note, I would kind of do more of a dig into pattern in that case, because it generally sets alarm bells whenever we see markets like that. We want a compelling argument that we can stand out in order for us to proceed. And similar to a cold market, we want as low MOQ as possible to really offset that risk. So let's take a look at a scorching market.
Yeah, I think the insight products and the ability to do that really changes things for us. It can't be spoken about enough.
So I'm going to go ultra generic. I'm not going to include terms like bamboo for this kind of product. I'm not even going to add with storage, because we want to see worst case scenario. Part of that compelling argument could be that this is a market within a market where it does have the storage. But let's see worst case scenario, this market here. So let's scroll down. So anything that is a lap desk, we're going to have to consider here. And let's wait for these BSRs to load. So 1,700 straight away. We've got one that's under 1,000. Whenever we're looking at under 1,000, I like to call those ultra low, because they should scare you. This market is huge. We can already see the three across the right here, ultra low. And then as we scroll down, we've got 3,000, 1,700, 3,000, 3,000, 2,000. I'm already out. There's just way too much risk here. And just on those two lines alone, we've ascertained that it's a huge market. We've also got a lot of choice for the consumer. We've got a number of different price points. We've got different materials, different colors, different designs. So really asking yourself, can you really stand out here? If you were to invest in a full MOQ order of this product, that would get me quite nervous. However, can we look at this in a little bit more detail and go with storage? So if we just type in spacebar, and I want to put in with storage, see what that does. Because while on one hand we do have a high risk, on one hand, can we, these are the questions I'm asking myself, can we mitigate that risk by search term? Are people looking for a lap desk with storage? We can't know for certain. So if you're in this kind of situation, I'd recommend just go with your gut of your first worst case scenario, because there are a ton of products out there. Why take risks when you don't need to? But if I were to delve into this, if this was product number 20 and I wanted to increase my risk a little bit, and I can get a low MVQ sort of product and I can test in different countries, it is actually quite tempting. So we do have a number of different styles, but yes, if we look at the market by artificially narrowing it as we are, we can see 30,000, 61,000, one that's well outside of range, 1,600, 59,000. So we are artificially narrowing this market down. So a bit more of an in-depth sort of risk analysis in my head. I would recommend staying clear of a product like this, but definitely an interesting one to kind of dive into, wouldn't you say, Esso?
When you're looking at a market like this, because the market is much bigger. You do see the fluctuation in price. That's one of the things that I noticed right away. When we were looking at that first one that was freezing, there wasn't as much fluctuation, meaning everything was very similar. But even on this first page where you were right here, um, you know, those three middle ones are number three, number one, number two, number three in laptop desks. So if you go down that side, they're right at there. There's a ton of fluctuation between $9.99 and $38.99, which you weren't seeing in some of those other markets, right? Because this market is so much bigger. There is much more demand here, that it changes many parts to the market. It's not just the offerings. It's the offerings and the change in those offerings that those offerings bring. And that competition is now you're competing for, it's those first three right in the middle there. They're so different. So how do you compete there? There's too much change.
Yep. Absolutely. And that was scorching. And we can see where we're all going next. We're going to blazing. And this is very simple. Whenever you see a product like this example, just pick one of the 3 bullet points here and take that advice. Please do, because I've seen too many mistakes in the past in terms of entering a market that is just way too big. And I think this is a very good example. When we're looking at bland, like this is probably like the polar opposite of bland, just because it's a cool product. It's a very giftable product. Yes, we would stay away from this because of the price point, but let's take a look at the market and go with Burger Press as our search term.
I've definitely seen this product on a list or two over the years.
Yeah, and you know what? If we look at, and I want to find my original pipeline of products that I brought in, and I guarantee that some form of a Burger Press was on there. It's almost like an initiation. If you don't have Burger Press in one of your early research, then you're definitely not doing it right.
Yeah, Emily definitely has 1 or 2 somewhere on a list.
132, 342, 766. We got 1,400, 10,000, 1,700, 2,000. I don't need to scroll any further. I'm about a third of the way down, and we're seeing ultra low BSRs left, right, and center. So this is definitely one to just avoid. I wouldn't even springboard off this into a new area because it's just so far away from the area that we like to operate. It's definitely just one to not even park, just no.
My suggestion here is if you really, really can't move off this product, just buy one and enjoy the use of it.
Yep. You'll definitely get more of a return doing it that way. So just going back to the top, the 80-20 rule, this is the one element that if you really wanted to get good at researching, understanding market size and how we operate, review this video on a replay, take screenshots of the slides if you want, but definitely this one area contributes to the majority of your researching success. It's definitely a learnable skill. Like I said at the start, it was something that I found very difficult at first. I went through a bit of a love-hate relationship with research, but just by doing it again and again and just really taking your time and being patient with it, you'll find you'll be saying exactly the same thing to someone else. And assessing a market size is the primary risk minimizer. And that's it. I've got drills. So if anyone has any ASINs to hand, or we can take a look at a few that I have on my springboards. I think we have enough time for at least a handful. Does anyone put any ASINs SO in the chat, or should we move forward with maybe some of the springboards?
No ASINs yet. I know there's a bit of a lag sometimes, so maybe pull up one with the springboard while we're looking for see if anyone throws one into the chat while you're looking for that. So start with that. Looks like you found the springboards, nice and easy.
Yep, this is the most recent one. I'm just going to grab the ASIN for our artificial turf rake. So, yep, exactly the same as what we're looking at, but slightly different because now we're going into how we're gonna assess the market. If we're just typing in grass rake, for example, it's an incorrect term for this, because this is specifically for an artificial turf. So hence why understanding the key term first is definitely paramount. So artificial turf rake, let's scroll down and just be mindful if anything that comes up is not an artificial turf rake, we don't assess it. So we've got 44,000, 10,000, we've got 22,000, 57,000, one that's out of range. Then we have a 30,000, another 30,000. Got this one that's I think slightly different. No, it's kind of like AstroTurf. It's out of range. The next one is not the same product, and we've got an 81,000. Looks like we're kind of going higher and higher now. We've got 66,000, another one, 69,000, 36, and we're starting to kind of move away from the product. And there's a few more stragglers at the top, which are well outside of range. But I'll turn to the lovely audience, and if you want to put in what you're seeing from this, and if we look at the market demand, I'm going to scroll back up because it's a relatively new sort of concept. We're looking at levels of demand. It's what we just saw: freezing, cold, mild, warm, hot. Is it scorching or is it blazing? And while you're typing in to the chat box, let's have another scroll of the page. I think this is a good one actually, so to look at, because it's not an immediate. I can give you a clue. It's definitely not freezing, and it's definitely not blazing either. So it's definitely going to be something in and around the middle. But what would you give it? Let's just wait for everybody to put in their responses.
No responses yet. I know there's a lag. With Circle, there's always a bit of a lag for the chat. So hopefully somebody comes in and gives us some answers. But it is a good one because it does offer a couple different points to it. Even in that orange one right there in the middle is at 200,000. Right next to it, you have a 30,000. So it does provide us with a little bit different. It's not a gimme. Let's put it that way, like you'd have in golf. So Patricia's saying she thinks it's warm.
Yep. And I think there is a bit of a lag, but we'll go with the one answer we have so far, and straight on the target. That's what I would consider to be a warm market as well. And the good thing about this is that if you got it wrong and you kind of saw this as mild or hot, you wouldn't be wrong, because you'd be able to treat it similarly to how we went through as well. And I can see that Sue's also mentioned mild, warm as well. So absolutely right. You would treat this as a mild, as a warm, as a hot. It's all in that middle area as well. But so I had a bunch more ASINs to hand, but I feel like we're out of time. But what I do want to ask is, anybody that's watching this live or watching it on a replay, do let me know if you want to see more of this. If these examples are really helping you in your research, if you want us to explore some of the other areas as well in terms of the attributes and looking at competitors as well. I like this approach of zooming into one element because it allows us to really dissect one area, which will make kind of assessing things as a whole a little bit more easier. But I really enjoyed this essay. I hope you did. I hope everybody else did as well.
I like zooming in and looking directly at this myself. It's very good. I would say too, if you have any of those products and you want to send them into approvals, I would say you're probably looking to make sure they're in that mild to hot area. That's the focus area for an approval, because we know if it's below that, we're just going to say what it is. Always going to give you a video back that says, hey, this is freezing cold, get out of here. Or if it's blazing, just to avoid. So if you have any products that fit that description, I'd say fire them in to the all approvals area, and definitely take advantage of that service.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to receiving your requests, and like Esso said as well, I'm going to be completely honest. And whenever I'm looking at these approval, I never peek before the recording. I always open it live. Hence why sometimes you might receive a video with the first couple of minutes saying, "What is this product?" let me just give me a second while I digest what this is and have an understanding before I can look at a market. So absolutely utilize what you have to hand. And yeah, it's definitely one great way of honing that skill.
Well, I appreciate you bringing me on today and letting me join you. So this is great. I hope everybody got a lot out of it. I know I did. So we'll see you again at the next one.
Yep, look forward to it.
All right.
Take care, everybody.